Good morning to everyone around the world, and some of you are up awfully early. Thank you for coming.
Hold on, let me get the chat on. There we go. There we have it live. Good morning. We are just thrilled to be here and thrilled to have Norman here and to be celebrating him. It's just fabulous. And we're going to ask him a few questions, and then we want to leave time for all of you to ask questions or make comments or just give a greeting to Norman in the chat. And we'll also have time for you to actually participate verbally if you would like to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And tell you that I have known Norman since about 1987, though I certainly knew of his work way before then. I met him face to face at a Society for the Study of Symbolic Interaction Stone Symposium in Tempe, Arizona. And I have to say, he was a little bit scary then. He had this booming voice and such a presence in the room, but we quickly became friends and colleagues because we could see that we had very similar missions and what we were trying to do. Norman ended up publishing the paper that I presented at that symposium in 1991. And that was on systematic sociological introspection. And he has been publishing my papers and reviewing my work and writing letters for me ever since, just like he has been doing for so many of you who are here. Norman was leading the way before I even met him. For example, in starting SSSI and in emphasizing emotions, qualitative methods, interactionism, and the personal as political, as well as encouraging experimental performative forms of first-person writing. He laid the footing for the work I and others have been committed to since the 1980s in emotional sociology, narrative inquiry, evocative autoethnography, and compassionate interviewing. His unwavering support for and contributions to our projects have opened opportunities, provided outlets, expanded audiences, and established legitimation. Without Norman, we would not have this interpretive and autoethnographic community. He has always been the voice out front, taking risks for all of us. Norman has resisted and carried on, occupying the role of father and mother, and now, like me, I think more a grandparent to our academic family, creating a world and places of refuge in which we all could come together, be with each other, and support each other.
I first ran across the work of Norman Denzin in 1969. When I was studying for my doctoral prelims and came across an article on ethnomethodology that he had published. In the years since, 52 years to be exact, I have experienced the pleasure of watching, first from a distance, more recently up close, Norman Denzin's profound influence on the development of interpretive qualitative inquiry. Norman saw the need to move qualitative inquiry from the field to the text to the reader in order to meet the needs of a new and broadening global generation of qualitative researchers, writers, and performance artists. He welcomed all of us around the world who did not want merely to describe the world in which we live, but rather to interpret, critique, and change it. Through new journals, handbooks, and international cross-disciplinary conferences, Norman Denzin has provided the leadership and the kindness that inspired the development of a new global community of qualitative researchers committed to social justice and to showing how to feel the sufferings of others, making it possible for symposiums like ours to flourish.
Norman is currently an emeritus professor at University of Illinois in Urbana, Champaign. His many honors, awards, and achievements are well known among qualitative scholars, including those in the autoethnography and narrative communities. He was the founder of ICQI in 2005, and with one exception during COVID, he has held annual conferences ever since. Among others, he has published 3 journals, very important to us: Qualitative Inquiry, Cultural Studies, Critical Methodologies, and the International Journal of Qualitative Research, along with many book series and edited conference volumes. He has published more than 200 articles and chapters and 50 books, and continues publishing widely. I just saw a few sites to his new work a few days ago. And Google Scholar, this is just amazing, has more than 200,000 citations to his work.
Norman Denzin has been an inspiration to hundreds, well, make that thousands of us. He came into our lives at a time when qualitative research desperately needed, an inspirational trailblazer who was unafraid to tell it like it is and could lead us across the bridge into a promising, if uncertain, future. He was energetic, outspoken, confident, non-conforming, subversive. He had his eyes on the future, as any adept revolutionary must. He took risks. He believed in his project and readily made leaps of faith and courage. He wrote manifestos. He never shied away from debate, taking on elite mainstreamers. He was there for the long haul and never impatient, seemingly always with a plan. He delivered on our behalf, and the more he delivered, the more we bought in. Of course, Norman did not do it all on his own. He had students, former students, friends, colleagues, and publishing houses standing nearby, supporting him, believing in him, working with him, trusting him. We are among those. We trusted him because we could see that his cause was our cause, and because he was kind and generous to so many of us living in societies that thwart and corrupt kindness.
I spoke to an epidemiologist about these methods.
So we want to move on now to a few issues/questions. Norman, at the time you may not have been using the term autoethnography in 1997, that is, when you published Interpretive Autoethnography, Ethnographic Practices for the 21st Century. But in that book, you praised efforts to make social science texts, quote, a means for the reader's own moral experience, your words, and you called special attention to narratives of the self that, quote, show us how to feel the sufferings of others, end quote. In retrospect, you appear to have been foreshadowing and inspiring what was to become the burgeoning development of autoethnography in the 21st century. Can you talk a little about that period of the mid-90s and how your interest in autoethnography evolved?
Well, thank you, Art. Thank you, Carolyn, for those generous, you're too kind. It takes a village to produce what we did, a global village. And you lay the foundation in Tampa. I do remember that first conference in Tampa when we were on a panel together, Carolyn. And Art, I remember reading your work before I met you in person. So our projects have been woven together for over almost this entire 50-year period. I think we wouldn't be here this morning if that connection hadn't been built. And then everything that flowed from that, which you spawned in your generosity and your vision, and the students who flocked to your program and the students that flock to your students program. This is a global project that just needed a little tweaking now and then, maybe a little more than a little tweaking. We all fought a battle in our home fronts over this long period, and lost homes and departments and found new homes, made new friends, had allies in the publishing world, as you said. I wouldn't be here, we wouldn't be here without Mitch Allen. I'm so glad to see his name here. He was a leader in this movement with SAGE in the early 80s. He created that handbook that launched a lot of this project. In any case, your question, what was going on in the 90s, I'd roll that back, what was going on in the 80s, what was going on in the 70s. The 90s, things were breaking apart, or they started to break apart in the 80s. Well, I think in the 70s. The Vietnam, I want to go back to the 60s, without dating myself too much, but the society was really breaking up during that long anti-war protest period, which laid the foundation for a number of the protest movements that we have, the fruits of which we realize today, from the women's movement to gay queer movement, to the foundations of critical race theory and civil rights. There was an unrest that moved in multiple directions, but the social sciences didn't have a home for them. There wasn't a methodology and there wasn't a theory for this unrest. So we were caught within two worlds. One was a world of protest, and the other was a conventional world of the academy, which somehow left politics out the door and didn't have a space for it in the classroom. That was the space that by the 70s, it started to be corrected with the movement in European social theory that came into the States through the humanities, through critical theory, psychoanalysis, structuralism, and post-structuralism. Those were the movements on my campus that I was blessed to be a part of at the Unit for Criticism. And that laid the foundation for me to be exposed to new forms of writing and representation. Now, by the time we got to the 80s and then the 90s, there was a desire to find a new way to write, and a new way to perform, and a new way to make things present to the reader. And this, Art and Carolyn both covered both of these points. For me, a critical moment happened in the 70s when I realized that I had been part of the anti-war protest movement. But if you read my work in the 70s, you would not know that.
Right.
There was nothing about that outside world that was breaking apart in my sociology. And I said, I made my agenda then to open up and create a social science that was responsive to this outside world and that would intervene in that world. You know, we marched in protest, we carried placards down streets, and we yelled at the police and the National Guard, and we held classes off campuses and out of the buildings, and we had an underground protest movement, but it wasn't our work. So that, to me, then became, how can I use my work as a way to intervene in this historical moment? And that's where C. Wright Mills became my mentor. Everybody has to have, I decided, laying in bed this morning, thinking about this, everybody has to have a book, an author, a writer, a set of lines, a song that they refer to over and over again, that haunts them. And that Mills said, you have to locate your biography in its historical moment. And you have to use your, now I'm filling in the spaces. That grips me. I read that book my first semester in graduate school in 1963. At the same time, I'm in these miserable sociological theory courses in my department, reading Talcott Parsons and structural functionalism and experimental models and all of this nonsense. And Mills cut to the chase. So that was my entry. My project was set by that sentence in Mills's sociological imagination. It has haunted me to this day. Everybody needs that sentence. I don't care who it is.
Yeah.
Or a handful of sentences. Sartre said, everybody is a universal singular. That's the version of what Mills said. That is, I universalize in my singularity this historical moment. So each biography is unique, uniquely situated historically. That being the case, only I can write this moment through my life, because only I have this life as accessible to me. That's my calling, to write my life into this moment and show you the way for you to write your way into this moment.
I love that, Norman. And I really think, I mean, that's where you and I connected. I mean, you were focused on, you know, writing your life in terms of the politics of the time and the kinds of movements you were involved with and so forth. And I got involved initially in wanting to see my life in all the stuff that we were studying. You know, I had relationships. I was trying to move from a small town person to the academy, and all these kinds of things were happening, and sociology wasn't speaking to any of it for me. So
right, exactly.
yeah.
And
So go ahead.
can you talk a little bit about, because this is where I came into your presence in the early 1990s with the cultural studies programs at Triple SI. And while it may not have been seen as a big innovation, for me, it was huge to come to those panels and later to participate in those cultural studies panels, which started to really mark the connection between the personal and the political.
The Triple SI meetings really were a fertile ground for this movement that we were. That group had itself broken away from the ASA, and we had been marginalized. But there were a group of us. I was thinking of that. We used to have panels and arts talking about them. Carolyn would be involved. Laurel Richardson was involved. Patricia Clough was involved. Michael McCall. I was rehearsing the names in my head a little while ago. And we would meet and give papers at the annual Triple SI meetings, and we called them postmodern mothers. All the mothers except me, we were all writing our way into using this new form of writing to express our connections to this larger set of apparatuses. And at one of the sessions, Laurel read a paper on Louisa May, a woman she had studied, a non-wed mother. And Laurel had turned the transcript of that woman's interview into a poem, a long narrative poem. And she read from the poem to the group of interactionists, and she handed out the transcript to the audience. And at one point, she skipped a line in the reading. And she admitted that she skipped a line. And somebody raised their hand and said, "You violated the trust of Louisa May, and you're not representing her life accurately. You skipped a line in the reading." The skipped line became a rallying point for us, because the critics and the audience were believing in the literal representation of a subject's experience through the transcribed text. Laurel was transforming that model into a site for her own creative representation of that life that was built on Louisa May's experiences. So there were exchanges in the journals. People threatened to leave the society. Laurel just thrived on it. But that was a kind of rallying point. We would have these sessions and people would fight with us. Because the fight was for real. We were saying there's another way to do this, and it's legitimate. You can't apply one framework to this framework. Each framework has its own aesthetic, its own logic, its own way of assessing itself. Now, give us a break. People marched out of sessions. Stan Lyman practically assaulted Michael McCall for the way she did an interpretive reading of bell hooks in a Midwest sociology in a big plenary meeting. Stan stood up and said, "You have no right to read her voice. You're not bell hooks." And Michael said, "Well, why can't I read her voice? Why can't I read her text?" We were this is nonsense.
Yeah.
Today, this wouldn't be an issue, but in the 80s and the 90s, this was the issue. People thought they wanted something, but they didn't know what they wanted, and if they didn't understand it, they criticized it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's hard to even begin to represent how much of an epiphany that was for so many of us. A major turning point. We can do this, and there's an audience for it. There's people hungering for it all around the world.
Yeah. No, and Carl Couch, who was, my mentor, he was on my dissertation committee. We were the best of, we were like this. Didn't like this. And he'd stand up at the meeting and say, "God damn it, Denzin, what are you talking about?" I'd be talking about post-structuralism and Derrida and so forth and so forth. And I'd say, "Carl, sit down. You haven't read
He
this."
called you a dumb shit, as I
He called
recall.
me dumb shit. And I'd say, "You can't criticize this because you haven't read us. Now be quiet and give us a chance." And Art was at some of the, Art and Carolyn were in the audiences of those. And,
Oh yeah,
it was electric, but we loved each other.
it was.
Yeah. And that was the spirit of that moment. We loved each other. In that space, we were able to learn from each other.
Mhm.
Now I see that same, the Congress has that. Your association has that same open support of experimentation and new vision and new voices. And I see it in your program this year. It's brilliant. I love it. I love it. That's the legacy. That's the legacy. So part of my project was to find a new way to write.
Right.
And at that time in the 80s and 90s, I had experienced losses in my life. Carl died. My mother and father died. Not that they were firm anchors, but they were anchors. They were gone. And I had nobody to go to meetings with anymore because Carl was gone. And I turned to, we had a cabin in the mountains in Montana. I turned to the West I started reading Western literature and writers like Wallace Stegner. And I wanted to find a new voice for myself. I was also reading Raymond Carver and his minimalist fiction, who he drew from Hemingway. I was drawn to the idea of show, don't tell, and less is more.
Mhm.
And I was looking for a way to write that way. And I tried to teach it in my seminars without much success, but we hammered away at it for about 50 years. But I wanted to take it one step further, and we were reading Walter Benjamin, the German critical theorist, who said the way to critique ideology is to present its contradictions back to itself, make its contradictions visible through the text. So I took from Benjamin the idea that and Johnny Saldana was in the background here, and Carver, to write plays, ethnodramas that took the voices of the actors in a situation and made them visible. And Carolyn was key to this. An offhanded remark, she talked about your seminar was reading my work out loud. Or at least I think she said that. And I thought, oh my goodness, we could do this. We could read this work out loud. This was about the time of the Clinton Lewinsky scandal. So we got the transcripts of the Clinton tapes and started acting those out in the seminar, reading the voices in that drama, and showing the contradictions, the ideological contradictions in that trial. That was a big move for me, to find the narratives, the historical texts that I could then make visible, often through a pretty clumsy, dramatic format, that would expose the contradictions that I was trying to critique. So that was my next move in terms of the representational writing project, was to turn to the ethnodrama. And I spent, thanks to Mitch Allen, I think he lost a lot of money on this, but my books on the American West and the Native Americans were all built around that model of bringing those voices present in and the contradictions in them. In my most recent book, I took a long narrative that was very popular and rewrote it in terms of the voices that I wanted to give a Native American named Ishi, a very influential book by an anthropologist and her husband, Theodora Kroeber. So that's a long-winded response to where the journey has taken me, Art and Carolyn.
Just in response to one of the things you just mentioned previously, threats to politics in the classroom. What are your thoughts about where we are right now with that issue? I think it's a big issue for a lot of people I know.
Well, we just got through the Trump. Well, we're still living through the Trump repression, which attempted to silence, contradictory voices. it was so bad. It was so ingrained in us in the 70s, in the 60s, you know, that Max Weber's notion that you couldn't bring politics into the classroom. So I would be lecturing in Lincoln Hall here on campus at the University of Illinois and say, okay, I'm stepping off the podium now and speaking as me. I want to express my political views on the war. I'm not expressing it as a professor, but as a person. I tried to make that distinction. Now that was just nonsense. But that's how deep it ran in the 60s. Now that atmosphere is back again, I think.
I do too, yeah.
And the only way to confront it is to confront it and to refuse to be silenced by these bullies. That's all we can do. And support our students who have the courage to do that.
So, and I have another concern about now for us and our project in, you know, autoethnography and performative social science, all the kinds of work that you have promoted. You know, in the past, we had several programs that were pretty strong in this respect. You know, your program in Southern Illinois and our program, South Florida. And while, you know, there's still one or two people, you know, at each program who are doing this kind of work, I find it more and more difficult. And there are newer programs that have some people doing this work, but I find it difficult to know where to tell young scholars to go to pursue this work where they will have more than a couple of people to work with them. And I just wonder, you know, to me, that's just something we have not been able to resolve. And I just wondered your thoughts on that.
I have the same concern as you do. It has to be institutionalized.
Yeah.
There has to be funding and a tradition of training that goes beyond the tenure of, you know, a small number of faculty at an institution. And it's so hard to get that in place and to have administrators willing to support it over the long haul. So students have to sort of scramble, I think. Now, at my campus, when I moved from sociology to the Institute of Communication and Research, I found a doctoral program that was, it supported itself by directing students to other faculty on other departments on campus, anthropology, English, philosophy, the College of Education, where there were sympathetic faculty. So that's, I find that those kinds of interdisciplinary supports are a way to overcome the absence of a critical mass within a particular department. So it's, in a sense, the student bears the weight of their own education by seeking out the faculty that they feel comfortable with and getting the support for that. And that can be done. That can be done.
And maybe we should even try to think of that in a broader way of, you know, where you could get a degree by having external people from around the world be on the committee. I know some people do that, but
yeah.
And these associations are real important for that, I think.
Yeah.
Yours and ours to provide.
Yeah, we could even do more in terms of supporting those kinds of interdisciplinary transnational initiatives, I think, with workshops on how to do it and the like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to get out of the departmental mentality.
Yeah.
Of, you know, building these huge departments, and the power centers are usually more mainstream people. Now with digital technology, I think that opens up the possibilities of having a faculty associated with a given discipline or department that is not just the local campus.
Right.
It can be international, it can be cross-country, but it takes a group of fairly senior people who aren't afraid to stand up and try to develop this kind of a project. I think it's very doable, but it requires leadership. And maybe that's something that our association and ICQI and several others can participate in. Because my concern is with the younger, more junior and graduate students who still feel this. And you can see it by some of the comments that are being written as we're speaking about, well, you know, who looks upon this work favorably? Where can I send my work to? Who will read it? All these kind of questions.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think we have that obligation to create that space for students, and we could be more aggressive, perhaps, in developing initiatives that would help be a kind of a clearinghouse for where these sympathetic faculties are for the interested graduate student who stumbles into your program or to mine, ours, and wants more, but they don't know where to turn. But if there was some kind of center clearinghouse that had a list of the sympathetic faculty, that could be quite useful.
Yeah. So we don't have a whole lot of time left. I want to turn to at least two other topics. But you know, it's a good interview when you've forgotten all about your questions, so, which we have. But I did want to turn back to you specifically for a few moments and just ask you, what work is still burning in your soul to do?
Well, I've been thinking about that. That has to be the driving force for each of us, and to continue to struggle with the unanswered project, the project that you still haven't done yet, and to have the vision and the energy to. I feel like I have one more thing to do, or to write about the West, but I don't know. I keep waiting for it to become clear. I would like to try one more run at this. We're doing a new edition of the handbook, and that's a labor of love. And laying that foundation in this current moment has been a challenge, because we started it at the end of Trump, and then the pandemic, and to, you know, right, and that's those spaces. It's not easy, and to survive in those spaces has been a challenge for all of us. But I think I got one more. I did a long paper after Ishii was done on the convergence of all of the Black Lives Matters, all those movements coming together. I did a long performance piece, which I liked. I struggled on that for about a year to have it come out, and I'm still not happy with it. But trying to find, always trying to find a project in the moment that speaks to it beyond its own historical moment. That's the space I'm in, Carol.
Okay.
Speaking of moments, you've been famous for detailing the various moments in the history of qualitative inquiry. Maybe this is a preview of the new handbook. Where are we now? What moment are we in?
Well, a contested present. You know, people laughed at us when they said, "Well, they keep adding new moments." And or the moments turn back on each other and become transformed, and the cycle moves to another clock. But when we started, we were just barely in a kind of postmodern, post-structural phase. Now that's old history.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's very complicated and very exciting because there's no dominant paradigm now that I'm aware of.
Well, and it fits with the political moment. I mean, it's
Right.
everything is up for grabs. Reality is up for grabs. You know, what is it? Where is it?
Yeah.
And
it is. So that's what's exciting about it. Now here's the other problem. When I was in graduate school, you were held responsible for a canon, right?
Yeah.
A set of theories, a set of research projects, a research specialization with its own literature, a methodology. You can pretty much pack your suitcase up and go on down on the job market, right? Well, there isn't one anymore. There isn't a fixed canon, a fixed theory. So I always felt that I was responsible to be current. And I had this wonderful connection to the humanities on this campus where they're always reading the new critique, the new reading, the new interpretation in the English department. They're not doing that in sociology. They're not doing it in communications, but the humanities are alive with scholars pushing against the boundaries. And so I felt a responsibility, like when I said to Couch, you haven't read the literature, Carl. So I have a responsibility today. Norm, read the literature. If you don't, you're going to be left behind. If you don't, you're going to be left behind. I'm not sure that's a good answer to you guys, but that it seems that we have that intellectual responsibility as citizens of this global community to be as current as absolutely possible.
Okay, one more question and then we'll get a few responses. And no surprise, I'm going to turn it back to the more personal. So you're retired and we're retired. Well, all three of us are not really retired. We just don't get paid anymore. We continue doing what we were always doing for the most part. And so I just wondered if you could speak to this period in your life, the opportunities, the challenges, any advice you might have for the rest of us who are retired about how to have a meaningful life. Anything you'd like to say about that?
Well, that's a hard question. Some of you know I've had quite a few health issues in the last of 3 or 4 years, which were weren't exactly what I planned on when I retired. Old age hits us whether we're ready for it or not. So I've had a major struggle maintaining a positive mental state as I work through these physical challenges I've had to work through. So the fire has to keep burning. But it has to burn on 2 fronts now. Burning for me, that is, to recapture that excitement of the flame of the moving the project to the next chapter. If I go back to Mills and to Sartre, only I can write this chapter. You can't write it. Art can't write it. Yeah. Tony can't write it.
Yeah.
So do I have, Keith can't write it? Chris can't write it? Do I have the vision, the passion to write it? And do I have the strength and the health to write it? And I have to have a responsibility. And this has been a struggle, you know, to not get depressed, to not get sidetracked, it's a gift to be here. This is, my wife said this morning, this is so wonderful, Norman.
It's wonderful for us to be with you at this moment.
Truly
I'm
is.
just so grateful. Believe me, I'm just really touched, just deeply touched and honored that you would do this, give me this opportunity. I really want to say how important this is to me.
It's important to the whole community. I mean, people, you can't see the chat probably, but people are just making wonderful comments about you, about this community, about feeling a part of it.
And how much hope you're giving to other people. It's all over the chat part. And
oh goodness. Oh, thank you, everybody. Thank you.
I think Tony's going to make a copy of this so that you can see all of the comments.
Well, that's,
later.
thank you, Tony.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who would like to make a comment verbally to Norman?
speak up.
Chris, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to say the best decision I've made in a long time was coming to this session. It's safe to say I wouldn't be here without the three of you. I'm so grateful to be here with you. You have made my life.
Thank you, Chris. Andy?
I also just wanted to say thank you. Like, I've never gotten to see Dr. Denzin speak anywhere, and my comprehensive exams list was like Bochner, Denzin, Ellis, Bochner, Denzin, Ellis. So like to have this moment with the three of you is priceless, and thank you. And also, Dr. Denzin, my piece for this conference is an ode to you, and it's searching for Yellowstone, about Yellowstone.
Oh, will you send it to me?
I sure will.
Thank you.
Aisha, hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
I just
Aisha.
wanted to say thank you so much. And I was one of those people in Denzin's class who tried to think about how to story my own life. And it is because of you, yes, I'm gonna cry, that I'm here. So thank you so much, Denzin, for believing in me that I could write my story and that other people would want to hear it. So thank you.
Thank you, Aisha.
Anyone else? This is your opportunity.
Hi, Norm.
Oh, there's
missed
Laurel. Hello.
Oh.
Hi, Norm. I'm so glad we've been in conspiracy together.
Conspiracy, we go back a long way.
Yeah. Let us continue. Let us not skip a beat.
Or line, or line.
Yeah. I hope to see you in May. Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you.
good to see you. Good to see you.
Good, great to see you. Great. I've
That
become a
was
10-year-old.
Laurel Richardson, for those of you who may not know her. Most of you do.
Okay, so she was all over my comps list too, so this is even cooler. Just saying.
Hey, Mitch, where are you? Come and say a word.
Mitch.
I don't know. He may not be.
Yeah, I'm.
There he is. I figured he was here.
There it is.
Great to see you looking so good, and I'm looking forward to us having all of us dance together in Urbana.
Yeah, great, great. Good to see you, Mitch.
And Ron Pilius, are you here? Get all the old timers up. Any more old timers?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello.
Hey, Ron.
Just wanted to say what a treat this has been to be here as part of this wonderful conference, and to get to listen to you three in this interview has just been a real joy. It's been like a wonderful kind of journey back historically for me, just thinking all the way back to the Vietnam War and those times, and just following Norman along in that history was just really a delight. It's just been a delight of my life to be able to be a part of this whole community, and to, you know, just live with all of you over these years. It's been quite a treat for me. Thank y'all all.
Thank you. Any of Norman's students? Oh, there's Cesar. Cesar, go ahead.
Cesar?
Hi. I'm sorry, I couldn't find very quickly the bottom, but Norm, thank you so much. You are always very inspiring to everyone around the world. As you know, I'm in Chile now, and I'm really thankful in the way that you are. Everything that you said is poetic. It's very moving. It's just like a literature. Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Cesar.
Stacy, she's got her hand up.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not turning my video on because it's really early where I'm at, but I am so excited to be able to be with you all here. And Art, I want to say thank you to Art for 2 years ago saying, have you heard about performative autoethnography? And have you heard about Norm's work? And I tried this year to go outside of my bubble, my comfort bubble, and do a bit of a performative autoethnography. And it is so, it's like a release where I can question myself and my research and culture and doubt and be okay in academia and not have to know all the answers and not have to have it all laid out. It's messy and I love it. And I really thank this beautiful lineage of the three of you. And it is a pleasure and an honor to be here today. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart and my soul and all my fibers of my being. It's important and I feel it, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy.
And Sahara.
Hi, thank you. I was very hesitant to switch on my mic and talk. The biggest reason was I know I may not be able to bring my voice together to talk to the people who were like literally, I would say, brought me out of a lot of darkness. I would say Norman, Ellis, and Professor Arthur. You guys really changed a lot of inferiority complexes in me. I have literally slept with your books beside my pillow. You guys have, from somewhere, from a different part of the world, you guys were existing in the very dark periods. And okay, this is a very nice moment that I'm trying to feel with you guys, and I definitely owe you a lot of gratitude from my side, and I'm very, very happy to be sharing this platform. Otherwise, I don't think so. From India, from an interior place like, you know, one small city from Chennai, I wouldn't be meeting you guys on, maybe I have to thank the COVID situation here for that, but I'm having a lot of gratitude to convey, and maybe I won't be finding the right words to do it, but still, if I don't take this chance, I don't think so I'll never be able to. And thanks to all three of you, and also Laurel, ma'am. Yeah, this is, I'm from a place where we even hesitate to call professors with their names. We call them still with sir and ma'am. So to, you know, believe in ourselves and talk our stories out, it took a long time for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Norman, let's give you the last word if there's anything you would like to say.
Well, I'm touched beyond belief. My soul is nourished this morning by all these voices and faces and the passion. I'm really encouraged by the energy and the excitement here that, you know, we've launched something now that can't be silenced. It can't be silenced. And the challenge is to take it to the next level and to make it impossible for anybody to be silenced in any institution, in any space, because of their pursuing the passion. This is a calling. It's not for the faint. It has to be the most important thing in your life. And you have to have people who support it. And, you know, people like Mitch and Laurel and Art and Carolyn, these are the anchors, Keith and Ron and the old timers. You know, we have to create a new generation of old timers and newcomers. And newcomers. We can't let Art and Carolyn down.
Right.
Or Mitch or Laurel or Ron. You can't let us down. You know, when Jefferson said to Adams, "We've given you a democracy. Now, what are you going to do with it?"
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm paraphrasing here. Maybe it wasn't Jefferson and Adams, but so this group has given you something. Now, what are you going to do with it? If you don't do something each day to keep this project going forward, you're letting the people who came before you down. I don't want to preach here on a pulpit, but well, I do want to actually. I want that to echo. What am I doing today to move this project forward for the next Art or Carolyn or Keith or Ron or Patricia or Chris
or Kip Jones?
Yes, or Hillary. Or, yes, Jeff. What am I doing? Yeah. If you can't answer that, then you know you've got to correct that tomorrow. Yeah. Because they'll take it away. Yeah. They'll take it away. They'll take your name off the wall. They'll change the key, the locks to the door.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They will.
We certainly found that to be true.
They'll erase your face in the history.
Yeah.
Of the department.
Mm-hmm. So stand up, be counted, do your part.
Exactly.
Yeah. Don't be afraid.
Exactly.
Can't live in fear.
Take a risk.
Yeah.
Norman, thank you so much. This was just absolutely wonderful. Everybody give him a big hand for everything that he's done and who he is and all his contributions and just for leading us. And,
well, thank you guys. My love to all of you. Celebrate this wonderful international community. Thank you.
Thank you, Norman. Goodbye.
Bye. Let me hear from all of you.
Thank you.
Right. Hope to see
Thank
you in
Norman.
May.
And thank you, Caroline and Art, as well.
Bye. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.